Hi everyone, my name is Daisa Daniel and I am Division 45 Student Representative. And I just wanted to take a moment to drop in and say thank you for watching this video. I do want to apologize. We did have some technical problems with sound and the internet, but we felt that this information was so critical for you to hear and for you to see. So we edited it to the best of our abilities, and we know it's not perfect, but we hope that in the future, you can join us one-on-one. Division 45 Student Committee is focused on providing more webinars, but also really committed to bringing students more information. If you yourself want to see a webinar or you want to see information that we just haven't offered yet, please feel free to email anyone in the Division 45 Student Representative Committee, but you can also visit our website, division45.org, where you can get more information of things we're doing and what we have stored next. So again, I want to apologize for all of the technical problems, but more than anything, I just want to send another very special thank you to Dr. Waters and Dr. Harrison in joining us and talking to us about what their transition from being a student to an early career psychologist. We hope that you have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you again. Bye. Hi, everyone. My name is Daisy Daniel. I am the Division 45 Student Representative. And this last year or so, we've had a lot of requests from students who are transitioning from kind of the student identity into what it looks like for students to become either a psychologist, or if they don't necessarily take the clinical route, what is it like for them to work in environments outside of academia? And so I really ask the both of you because I either know you personally or I've heard from other people that you guys are doing amazing things. And you're also ECPs, so early career psychologists. So a little bit out of the field, but like you haven't been out of the field like a decade or anything like that. So I thought I would get your feedback on just what your transition's like. And I really just wanted to start with introductions. So if you could tell us a little about who you are and where you're currently working.
Sure, I can start. I am Lena Harrison. I completed my undergrad degree at UCLA in culture studies with emphasis on Latin American studies. And I completed my PhD in clinical psychology at the Pacific Graduate School of Psychology at Palo Alto University. Did my internship and my postdoc at the VA in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And recently relocated back to the Bay Area and started my first staff position at the Palo Alto VA. I work in a residential substance abuse treatment program. I have a very small private practice, which is growing.
Hi, I'm Amanda Waters. I completed my undergrad in psychology at Biola University and then went on to do my PhD and master's in clinical psychology at Rosemead School of Psychology in Southern California. So both West Coasters. I finished my pre-doc internship at Virginia Commonwealth University's University Counseling Services, so University Counseling Center, and now I'm employed. I kind of skipped the formal postdoc, but accrued postdoc hours at the University of Connecticut's Counseling Center. And I'm still there, and I am the Multicultural Specialist on staff. So I have a split kind of responsibilities between clinical and administrative responsibilities.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. So one question that kind of stood out for me is, how did you transition from like your internship sites into where you are now? And like what helped you make that decision?
That's a good question. I think it was a really scary process because there are so many unknowns, and going from doctoral programs where everything is so laid out and structured to internship where there's very strict guidelines on, contacting sites, how to apply, the match day, all of that. It all comes together and it's all like super formal. And then I started applying to jobs, and I applied to some postdocs and trying to figure out like, what do I want to do? Because I'm going to graduate with this doctorate that I've been working on for forever, it feels like. And, you know, the world's my oyster, and what do I do next? So I guess the process part, really a lot of sorting through and applying and thinking, did I actually want to apply there? But figuring out along the way, like, okay, so maybe this application is just to not close that door. Or maybe, like, I defended my dissertation while I was on internship, and I was like, well, I need to finish this draft of my dissertation, so I can't apply to this position. And so I think some of that happened naturally, and some of that happened with a little bit more intention of like, no, I really think that these types of jobs are the types of positions that I'm really looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think for me, it was a little bit of a similar process. Same thing, going from very structured, here's the next step, to once you start getting out into the field, it's kind of feels like more of a free-for-all. For me, what was difficult was that I was completing internship and postdoc out of California with plans to move back to California, but I was able to take the ECCP while I was in Puerto Rico, but I couldn't take the California state licensing exam. So I was applying to positions, but I wasn't fully licensed yet, and so just that timing became difficult. Because, you know, a lot of places were looking for people to start right away, and I had to wait till I finished postdoc, got back, got a test date. So that definitely delayed my job start process. I work in the VA system, and sometimes the HR in the VA can really take a long time. So I got my job offer on Thanksgiving of last year, and I didn't start working until the first week of April because the HR process took so long. So that's where, in the meantime, it's really important to get creative. If you have any other type of job skill to fall back on, that's really helpful. I waited tables all throughout grad school, and the restaurant I had been at took me back, which was really awesome. And I also chose during that time to start private practice because I knew that eventually that's where I want to be, kind of have a balance between hospital work and private practice. And so it made sense to get started then when I didn't have the pressures of a full-time job. So I guess I would say that the biggest part is when you're transitioning out of internship or postdoc into your first job is really flexibility and hustling, really just figuring out whatever works and doing that. And having faith that it will work out. You have your PhD, you're going to be licensed if you're going to do clinical work. And if not, you know, the doors will open. So I think just having faith in that process is really important.
Yeah. And
can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
So absolutely. I guess that having faith in your process, you know, it was like this idea. One of my director on internship was really encouraging in the whole process and just saying, like, Amanda, like, are your basic needs going to be met? Will you have housing? Will you have food? Will you have a, you know, like kind of the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy? And then if so, we can just build up from there. So making sure the basic needs are met, and then, yeah.
Definitely.
And kind of to like touch base on that and get a better idea, because it sounds like not just flexibility, but like trusting this almost invisible process that may not always be validated. So I'm wondering, what advice do you have, or what do you think is helpful for students who are kind of met all these benchmarkers, but there's this weird gray area in between jumping into like something else that's a little bit more stable and kind of like figuring out what's next for you?
So do you mean like managing anxiety during that time? Or?
Yeah, managing anxiety. And I know Amanda kind of talked about like meeting your needs, but I also think of what family pressures and even also having some personal, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but like, and I always want to call it unrealistic, but like this idea of where you should be and realizing that just may not be the case because you got your PhD.
In terms of family, I think it really depends on your situation. So if you have a partner and a family of your own, dependents, people who are counting on you, I think that can definitely add an extra layer of pressure, which just given my current circumstances, I didn't have. I think I'm really lucky that I have parents that were able to help me and support me through that process, just in terms of I stayed with them for a while when I first got back while I was getting on my feet. And then I think it's really important. I mean, I really think it goes back to self-care. You know, are you exercising? Are you eating healthy? Are you sleeping? Are you spending quality time with people that give you energy and give you life? I think all of those things that we tell our clients and our patients, the transition from student to ECP, I think all of that stuff is really important during that time.
Yeah, I echo all of that. I don't know that there's necessarily advice other than that. Reaching out to contacts. I heard through grapevines for practicum supervisors, or not even my supervisors, but people in the same clinic or in associated, you know, agencies or organizations, trying to figure out, like, if in the event that I didn't have a job, what could I do? What are the piecemeal things that I could put together to have some kind of income? So that was, I mean, it's helpful and encouraging to have even a few.
Crap, my thing died. Oop, everything's frozen. Sorry about that. My computer just crashed, which we were talking about earlier. I last heard you say that really networking with people and getting, not necessarily giving advice, but talking to people you knew in your network about possible situations or possible openings or even supervisors. And my question to that was, how did you begin to build your network? And then know that you could touch base back with them and get that information?
Yeah. I think it begins like in undergrad or early grad school. Who are the faculty members who wrote your letters of rec for grad school? Are you still in contact with them? Are, like, all the kind of loose connections that you might have, staying in contact with people from different practicum agencies, making friends with older grad students who have their own network of people and agencies, faculty who might have moved to a different institution, or you know, it's about making those kind of loose connections work, and telling people, like, hey, like, please, you know, if there's another opportunity, feel free to share that I'm looking with, you know, whoever else. So kind of that passing it on and networking chain can be helpful.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I think that it definitely starts in undergrad or grad school. I think social media makes it a lot more helpful. I mean, I'm friends on Facebook and LinkedIn with a lot of my old supervisors and professors and practicum colleagues and things like that. So yeah, similar to what Amanda was saying, touching base, staying in contact, reaching out. And one good thing after you have a meeting with someone about whatever project you're working on or whatever else you're looking for, one helpful question can be asking them, who else should I talk to? Who should I reach out to next? What's the next step? That's definitely helped lead to, I think, just connections.
Something that I realized you didn't talk about was associations. So I'm wondering, like in your network, how have associations like APA or like this webinars for Division 45 or other organizations, maybe not even connected to psychology, that have been helpful in transitioning as an ECP, but then also like building your network?
Yeah, for me, I was a member of APAGS for 2 years. I was the diversity focus member at large. So that helped me meet a lot of colleagues and mentors outside of my specific grad school program, which I think was great for just extending my network. For me personally, I don't know that that helped as much with actually getting a job. But it has helped a lot with just connecting with people with shared interests. You know, if I ever have a question about something advocacy related, I know who I can reach out to, and if they don't know the answer, they'll know who to connect me to. So I think in my experience, being connected with my professional associations has been really helpful in helping me feel more like grounded in the field. That there is a network of psychologists who were in this field together and can help me figure out anything and everything related to psychology.
Yeah. I guess thinking about it, I was on the Division 45 student committee as a campus representative co-chair. And so during that time, tried to, recruit and advocate for Division 45 through campus reps across the country, which I think was a really cool opportunity to meet other students and figure out like, okay, so like, what is this like, national organization involvement thing? What does that look like? Because of that, I got connected with the National Multicultural Conference and Summit as a student planning committee representative for Division 45 when that was in Atlanta. And then from there, so I guess when I was graduating, I was like, well, I guess I can't be on the student committee anymore. So I emailed a couple of people who I knew within kind of Division 45 governance, and was like, hey, like, I'd really love to stay involved, but I don't know if there's any positions or openings. I'm really excited about it, and kind of reaching out to those kind of loose networks of people, and got an email back from Stanley Sue saying, hey, like, we need a new newsletter editor. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. But kind of trusting that sense of like, okay, well, this seems like a really great opportunity. It's something that I was looking for and wanting to stay involved. And that whole conversation was happening at about the same time I was applying and interviewing for positions. And so being able to say in my job interviews, like, yes, I'm connected nationally to other psychologists. I'm doing diversity related work because it matters, not just in whatever position that I'm applying for, but in my professional identity as a whole, regardless of whatever position that I get or what title that I have, it's going to matter. And so being able to kind of demonstrate that can be really helpful too.
Yeah. And something that you said that was interesting to me is you talked about your professional identity. And I'm wondering, as you've transitioned over time, what and how has your professional identity changed from graduating as a student to where you are currently?
That's a good question. I think it's hard, right? Because like professional identity as a student felt so much more like this emphasis on like, oh, I'm a student, and how do I learn as much as I can? And not that I don't want to continue to do that now, because that's definitely a huge part of who I am, I think, as a person and, you know, professionally. Like, and if we stop growing, I think there's a problem. But the emphasis then it becomes on like, okay, so how do I incorporate or live out all the things that I've been learning over the last however many years it's been, and really treat people, and like trusting that I have a good treatment plan in place, creating a treatment plan and on my own license, and saying like, yes, I believe in myself and I believe in these theories and these interventions in order to make sure that I'm supporting my clients in the best way possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that, you know, all throughout grad school, and even postdoc, you're under supervision. And so, yes, you are learning skills and best practices, but there's always somebody kind of over your shoulder. And that adds just a different element, at least for me, in my approach to my work and what I'm thinking about, because part of it is, okay, somebody's going to be reading this and evaluating it. And for me, it's felt really freeing to know, like Amanda was saying, okay, I'm licensed, I'm the psychologist, this is my treatment plan, this is the theory backing up why I'm doing the interventions that I'm doing, and just really sinking into that identity, and believing in it. It's been a really cool process for me that I've just really enjoyed. I just feel like, I just feel like everything that I did in grad school is coming to fruition in this really organic and interesting and fun and fulfilling way.
And when I think about it, I also think about how it takes a lot of time and a lot of faith in that process, and really trusting that process. And I'm wondering, how has it been to realize that you no longer have supervision and this is like your license? How has it been to realize you don't have supervision?
So logistically, it's been nice because I don't have that extra hour or two every week that I have to account for. But clinically speaking, I miss it sometimes. And so I'll seek it out informally. So I'll call a colleague when I'm driving home from work and talk about this case I had, or this interaction with a patient that didn't go as well as I thought. And when I have time with my current supervisor in the clinic we're in, I'll circle back to him. But it's just the pace of the clinic is so fast that that's just not possible on a weekly basis the way it was throughout grad school. So finding ways to supervise yourself, to seek out colleagues that you know can lend an ear for a minute here or there. But I definitely, supervision / consultation is a really important part of the work to me. And just because I don't have to have it anymore doesn't mean that I'm letting it go by any means.
Yeah, definitely. So in my clinic, we're fortunate enough to have some time every week to do case conference. And so we talk through difficult cases or issues that come up, kind of maybe some themes that we're seeing across different clients or even across different providers that people experience. Because I work at a university counseling center, there's some definite like ebbs and flows to the semester. September, October, there's a lot of homesickness and anxiety, midterms, and, you know, especially right before Thanksgiving break, there's a lot of stuff that comes up for students. And so it's really nice to recenter with colleagues and say, like, here's the big issues going on, or here's an issue that I'm facing in this particular circumstance. And being able to check back in with my peers is really great. Checking back in with my supervisor, my former clinical supervisor, but, you know, working in any kind of system, generally means that you do have a boss. And so I think it's been really nice for me to kind of toss out ideas or thoughts about maybe not necessarily clinical work, but things that could be impacting my clinical work, or kind of the general milieu that I'm working in. And sometimes there's, things in the world or in the United States over, especially the last, year or so, that have really impacted students of color, and, being a provider of color, figuring out like, okay, so how do I support these students and also take care of myself? And there was one other thing. So I also supervise a practicum student. And so I think providing supervision also makes me kind of check again, like what are my thoughts and how am I thinking about my supervisees' clients, and all of the things that go into supervision, but just kind of on the flip side, which I think definitely makes me a better psychologist too.
Yeah, and something we've hinted to a lot but not really talked about is the licensure process. And so I'm wondering, for each of you, how has it been to kind of tackle the ECCP and then to really get licensed in your state?
So I got licensed in the state of California. I studied for and took the ECCP during postdoc. I had plans that I was going to take it slow and read through the books once and just be very thoughtful and intentional about it. And when it came down to it, I just had to go back to tried and true methods, which was just buckling down for like 7 or 8 weeks straight. That's all I did. I listened to the audios to and from work every day. I studied 2 or 3 hours at night, all day on the weekends. Not a fun process, but I knew that that's what would work for me. And then getting licensed in the state of California. So they have some test centers all over the nation, but they didn't have any in Puerto Rico. So I had to come back to the state, sign up, get licensed. And the California exam, you can only take the test once every quarter because they change the test each quarter. So there's pressure to pass it on the first try, because if not, depending on when you take it, you'll have to wait 3 or 4 months to take it again. So luckily I passed on the first try, and then there were a bunch of CEs that I had to do. Some of them, my grad school classes fulfilled those requirements. Others of them, I had to get some books, take some more exams online, submit all the paperwork to the board. You have to submit your fingerprint. So when you're first starting out with the licensure process, it can seem really daunting. And in my experience, the best thing is just a step at a time. Just focus on ECCP, then focus on the state exam, then all the little bits and moving pieces, then do those, and slowly by slowly it'll get done.
Yeah, one thing at a time is really good advice. So in Connecticut, we have to send in like our general application, and then kind of wait for that magical email to say, hey, you're approved to apply for or to sit for the ECCP. And I want to say I applied in like June or July, and then it had to go through like multiple revisions of the application because there were either dates wrong or something like that like a checkbox or something. And so I think there's a lot of frustration and with myself and also the process, and just kind of taking a second to be like, okay, like it's not the end of the world, it's gonna be okay. But it's just frustrating right now, and validating that for myself and having other people validate, yes, licensure in this state and any other state is going to be frustrating. It was odd. I'm still not sure exactly what happened or why this happened, but I got approval to sit for the state ethics exam first instead of the ECCP. And so I studied for that and took that first, and thankfully I passed. And so that was nice to like think, okay, so ECP is really like literally the last thing. And probably similar, I had really grand hopes of, you know, spacing it out and, you know, adhering to some like study plan that some other people have like created, or, you know, out of the books and audio. But that, like, you know, the audio tapes were probably what were the most helpful, and practice exams were practice exams, and then audio probably. But I would listen to audio when I went for a run, or just like so boring. But, you know, doing that and to and from work, and like as many like times that I could, I did take some time off work in order to study. I would take like a couple hours leave in order to study on like a weekday, so that I had a little bit extra time in the evenings, and actually leaving work then and going to a coffee shop to go study, because I knew if I stayed at work, I would do work stuff. If I went home, I would find other things to do. But really sitting myself down and forcing myself to say like, okay, so this is just, you know, a brief period of time that we're going to do this, and then we're going to take the test and it's going to be over. But yeah, it's a lot of pep talks.
Yeah, but I also think of not just the pep talks, but then like it must feel just such a great accomplishment to finally like cross that bridge and like get those things done. And then I'm wondering, what is the process like, or have you even considered the process of then maintaining your license?
Not sure how it is in Connecticut, but in California, we have 26 continuing education credits every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I first got licensed last December, so I'll be up this coming December. Luckily, I took a training recently at the VA, which counted for like 18 of those units because it was a 3-day thing. So just making sure I make up the rest between now and next December. But what I found is that opportunities for CEs are everywhere. Like I'm always seeing stuff coming through on listservs, like an hour here, an hour there, depending on where you work, things will come up. If you go to APA convention, you can knock out a lot there. So that process hasn't seemed as bad, but it's also really expensive to renew it's a couple $100. I think my initial license was $500 or $600, and I can't remember the renewal fee, but that's one thing that you have to budget for and keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. I think Connecticut is like $500 or $600 a year to be licensed, so it's definitely a cost. And we have 10 CEs every year whenever your license gets due. And so there's some like specific things that we need to cover on different scales. So depending on when you got licensed, and, you know, every 2 years you need a CE on this topic, or every, you know, that kind of thing. So I think being mindful of that feels important. But at that point, I'm kind of, like I got licensed once, I'm not going to let it lapse. I'm going to make sure that everything possible that could go wrong, I'm going to account for. And I'm really grateful that I have professional development money set aside from my work to pay for some professional development, which would be like CEUs. APA is a huge, you know, one, of course. And yeah, they just come through all the time. So I'm not concerned that I won't be able to find opportunities or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and something that kind of stuck out to me is that it's not just about like the initial getting license, but it's also like staying in tune to what your state is doing and making sure you're able to meet those objectives like as your license is being renewed. So the cost is a lot, but I also think of how important it is to make sure your CEUs are matching the criteria that the state is also requiring of you.
Right.
And so
Until we
Mandy,
get to a national licensure. Maybe,
well,
hopefully.
yeah. Are you gonna run for president and make that happen?
You know, it's tempting.
Well, APA 2025, maybe.
Vote for DESA.
I just want to be on your campaign. So something else that came up is you talked a lot about the cost of it, which was so surprising to me because I don't think I actually knew that. And I'm wondering, how have you budgeted for that? Especially, I think of how expensive the match process can be and like internship can be, traveling and interviewing. But then once you're headed towards postdoc or graduating, there's also this like extra fee of getting licensed.
I really didn't know any of that or think about any of that beforehand. So I didn't really budget. I don't know if this was a good plan or a bad plan, but I just got a no interest credit card, charged everything to that, and then just made the monthly payments over the 1 or 2 years that they give you before they accrue interest. So that seemed like a good way to go, so it wouldn't affect my credit. And family could help me with things here and there, which I'm really grateful to have had that option. But yeah, it hits you really hard. I know that when I was on APAGS, Christine Jehu, who was our chair at the time, had put some data together about all of the costs that it took for test materials, the cost to sit for the exam, the fingerprint costs, the state license exam costs, and the cost of the actual license, and was trying to do some advocacy around that because it's a huge burden for people who don't have a good steady income.
Yeah. I was probably in the same boat. Like, I didn't necessarily have this idea of like, oh yeah, it's going to be really expensive. I knew sitting for the actual EPPP was going to be $600, I think it is. And I'm sorry. But yeah, that was like the only number that I had in my head. I didn't really have other like fees and all that stuff to account for until I got there, and I was like, oh, like I guess I need to pay attention to this. Thankfully, I think because I had been working for about a year in a full-time staff position, I had some money saved, so it wasn't a debilitating concern. But I do think that it is a really major cost when it's trying to finish grad school and enter the workforce, and being advocates ourselves as psychologists for the general good, while it's increasingly difficult for students to transition into early career psychologists because of the costs associated with it.
Yeah, and I wonder, especially because you talked a little bit about being able to get CEUs also through APA, which can kind of help with the cost of maintaining your license. But I'm wondering, for you, what have like either advice or like what would you tell a student who just finds out that they have to pay the $600 for a license while also considering maintaining this network in APA or other organizations as well?
You mean the cost to stay connected with these organizations?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to be quite honest, a bunch of my memberships are coming up due in January, and I'm going to evaluate which ones I'm really getting value from, because they get really expensive once you're licensed. It goes up from the student fee of like $50 to $80, depending on the association, to a couple hundred each. And I'm just, as an early career professional, I'm not at the point where I can afford to maintain all of those all the time.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I guess I think it started with like when I was applying for internship. A lot of my memberships lapsed because even as a student, um, a $20 to $50 membership might be the difference between, you know, a year's membership in an organization and an application, um, and that's like a very, you know, one-to-one cost difference that I just realized like I at this point in time it feels important and I also can't afford it, and so kind of making those decisions feels really difficult, but trying to navigate all of that too. So now that I do have a little bit more leeway financially, I think being able to assess now that I haven't had those memberships, like do I want to join back in as an early career professional, and yeah, and trying to figure out where the priorities are, because you know there's so many good causes out there, and it's not just about like psychological memberships. And there's other organizations that are out there as well, and it's tough. It's really hard to choose.
Yeah, and something that I also wonder is you kind of spoke to what it's like to transition from student to ECP, but what do you think these organizations should know for maintaining you as a member? Because it's not just, are you getting a cost benefit out of it? So like, what are you getting out of this? But then also like, what are they, like, what do you think would be more helpful for you to either pay the cost or meet the expectation of wanting to stay?
I think it'd be great to have like an ECP or like step up membership. And I know that's not necessarily possible for all organizations, but I know that some do. In terms of kind of benefits, I think really it's about, I think, where I'm at professionally, and yeah, and so kind of what are my particular wants and desires in relation to my current job, and then also career trajectory. Where do I want to go next, and being able to stay in contact with those people, and yeah, not sure that I have tons of well-rounded thoughts, but maybe those are starting points.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add either.
Thank you. So something else we didn't really talk about yet, and something I was wondering for each of you, is how mentorship has been a part of either your pathway to ECP, or how you've been able to mentor others, and if mentorship is even a factor in like where you are now or where you're going.
So being mentored or providing mentorship?
I think a little bit of both, and the reason I asked for both is because I think for us as students, it's almost this expectation that we should have mentors. But then I wonder what happens as you transition into the ECP. Do you still have that expectation, or do you wake up and you become the mentor?
I don't know if the expectation is still there, but I think going back to what you were saying about your network, that your mentors just become part of your network as you transition into the field. Maybe not in the same capacity, but knowing that it's someone that you could still bounce ideas off of, reach out to with a problem if you have a question. And then it's funny, but I don't know if you automatically wake up and you are a mentor, but opportunities kind of start arising, like this, for instance, today, you know, you had asked my colleague James Garcia if he could do it. He couldn't, but he recommended me. So in that way, as you become involved with things, you meet people, get recommended for things here and there. And so it just kind of starts to grow. I've also made it a point to join my local county psychological association. And sometimes undergrads will post stuff on there, and if I can, I always try to make it a point to respond to them, make myself available to them, because I appreciated it so much when people did that for me. So I recently had a woman who's in community college right now studying psychology. She came and interviewed me at work about the profession, and so yeah, I'm looking to kind of start local for now in terms of becoming a mentor.
Yeah. Definitely that idea of, you know, your mentors in grad school definitely transition into, like, you know, depending on, I think, the type of relationship that you have with them, colleagues and friends, and that's been really fun and cool, honestly, to have. And now I feel like I'm gathering a coalition of people who are mentoring me in general kind of university counseling center life and university life. And I was involved in a university for, like, you know, over 10 years, or it feels that sense of how do I be a staff member at a university versus a student. And I might have this idea of, like, oh, I know what the resources are as a student, but what does that look like as I network with people across campus and advocate for the clients that I see, and say, like, okay, so if you need to get connected with the Center for Students with Disabilities, can I pick up the phone and call and say, like, hey, I have this student, when's your next available appointment? Can I call over to my colleagues at Student Health and at Wellness and Prevention to say, hey, there's a student who needs an appointment for whatever reason, and being able to develop those relationships across campus are really important. And I really appreciated that, and gathering colleagues across the university and across the Division of Student Affairs to really encourage me to figure out, like, okay, so how do I advocate for, you know, positive change throughout the university as a staff member. And then in terms of, like, mentoring other people, I got connected with the Connecticut Psychological Association because I didn't really know anything about Connecticut before I moved here. And so that's been really helpful. And then in terms of kind of, like, the trajectory, like, I wish there was, like, kind of a switch that you could turn on and say, like, hey, I'm a mentor now. But I'm thinking back to, like, grad school and, like, the younger or, you know, earlier students in my lab, talking with them about, like, this grad school process. And then I was also serving on student government within my program, and was a part of, like, a mentorship committee that looked at mentorship across the program and how we can connect people with, you know, different students or faculty, and really mentor them through the program. And so I think being able to think a little bit systematically while I was still in grad school about like, individual students and what their needs are, but then also how to advocate for change within a system that will make it work better for people too. I think it was really powerful and really helpful in shaping how I viewed mentorship.
Yeah. And I'm kind of thinking for students who are interested in, like, following your pathway, either into a counseling center or to the VA, what is one thing that you think you found helpful that might help them in transitioning from an internship process into being a staff member?
I guess for me, I would say really making the system work for you. So the VA has tons of resources in terms of professional development trainings, and also on like the logistical admin side of things to kind of make your office more user friendly, or getting 2 monitors instead of 1, and because it is sometimes that information can be hard to come by. So I would say just not being afraid to like delve into the intranet, call people, network with people, introduce yourself to people, and just really make the system work for you. And because at the end of the day, it increases your efficiency at work. It can open up new pathways and job opportunities. You never know. And there's just such a wealth of knowledge, I feel like, in whatever setting you're in. And it's just really valuable to kind of be strategic, be network, be political, but really make the system work for you.
Yeah, that's, I guess university counseling centers, I mean, in general, it's similar with internship. It feels like you want to find a really good fit for who you are, the type of work that you want to do, and figuring out how to advocate for yourself in that way, strategically applying for certain positions, and just knowing the university counseling center world is really, really, really connected, and so knowing that. I think can be really helpful in terms of my training director. Hey, like Amanda applied, we're really excited. And it's great to have letters of recommendation, but some of those informal ties, I had like a friend of a friend of a friend tell me, like, give me feedback through all these different chains of like people like, oh yeah, UConn's actually like this really great place to work, and figuring out what the culture is a little bit more from like these looser connections. You can find out a lot of information through kind of the general, like, however many 2 degrees of separation that you might have with someone in a different university counseling center.
Sorry about that.
Uh-oh. Could you repeat that?
Yes. So hold on, let me move a little bit. So I was saying that you've made the process not seem so daunting for students who are moving out of an internship process, and that it could be potentially a lot easier than we've imagined. And I'm wondering for you both, as we kind of wrap up our time, what are self-care things that you've done that have helped you manage the stress of this process?
I think like making sure I'm within my normal, and figuring out whatever your normal is. And so, hanging out with friends, eating good food, getting enough sleep, and figuring out what that is, and being able to notice, am I deviating from this? Am I withdrawing from people? Am I not doing anything to take care of myself in the way that I typically would if I didn't have all these other stressors going on, and figuring that out. I think it's hard because I moved to Connecticut from California, or from Virginia from internship, but essentially from California, and so I didn't know anybody in the area, and so trying to figure out like how do I spend time with people when I'm just getting to know them, and trying to figure out like how do I be this professional, because like, and so this whole sense of normal is totally thrown off, but being able to check back in with myself and the people that do know me well, even if they're across the country, felt really, really valuable to me and really important. And even things that felt a little bit more normal before grad school, that through grad school is like, oh, I feel like I'm not exercising as much as I used to. I need to remember to do that. I need to like actually make a concerted effort to say like, okay, no, I'm going to take care of my body. And doing things like that of like, oh yeah, maybe that return to normal isn't for several years in the past, but being able to create that space and time is, yeah, invaluable.
Yeah, I would echo everything Amanda was saying, especially, things that you did before grad school that kind of fell by the wayside, just starting those up again, because there aren't as many demands on your time as you transition to being an ECP, and that's been really nice and really, really that does get back to normal.
I really just want to say thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this panel, and really letting us get to know you both, and also bearing with the internet / technical problems. But as students, we really appreciate all of the information you gave us today, and just thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. I can't thank you enough, because I think that this information is not always so easy for us to get. And the fact that you're willing to share it is just so powerful for students of color, but really students in general. So again, thank you so much for coming, and just being a part of the invitation. Of course.
Thank you.
Bye. It's nice to meet you both.